Hello, and welcome to another episode of Uncanny Oddities. Tonight, we are diving into the holidays. I don't know what holidays are. Maybe those are happy cows that like producing really good milk. Holidays buried beneath the surface. The ones rewritten, repackaged, and hidden in plain sight. And hello, James. Good to see you tonight. We have some interesting stuff to look into tonight. The rituals and the loops of these past holidays, and the truth that they seem to forgot to leave on the calendar. So, tonight, we're going to start off with the first segment, the Festival of Bones. I like my creepy names. So, the modern year is a lie. A pretty lie, but a lie. Behind every Hallmark holiday, there was once blood. Take Saturnalia, for example, the Roman festival that predates Christmas, a time when the roles of master and slave were reversed. Gifts were offered, and, in some cases, human sacrifices were made. Yes, joy, feasting, and murder. That was the season. Saturnalia wasn't about light. It was about surviving winter by appeasing the god Saturn, the god of time. Ooh, I like that. I like being the god of time. I think I want to be Saturn. That sounds like a sweet gig. Imagine just being able to pause time and get all your work done. That would be fun. Anyways, but imagine what Christmas looks like through that lens. The lights, the cheer, the tree, a sacrificial pine dressed in red and gold, pierced with hooks and topped with an eye. I mean, star. A star. You see, we've been celebrating the ritual of reversal for centuries now. We just forgot what we were trying to reverse. Now, we're going to get into the masks that remember. You got to wonder. There's, Halloween, that's the first one we think of, but there's so many more holidays that involve masks. Mardi Gras, Purim, Carnival, all mask holidays, and all strange in their own ways. But what if masks weren't about hiding? What if they were about opening? A gateway, a permission slip, if you would. Because in ancient rituals, putting on a mask wasn't play, it was invocation. You became the god, the demon, the dead. Whatever you mimicked, you became. And there has been, mention of this in pop culture. For example, I was a big fan of The Fairly Odd Parents when I was a kid, and I remember they had an episode where Timmy wished that everyone had the most realistic costumes, and their costumes became so realistic that everyone literally turned into their costumes. Just little stuff like that. So, there has been some pop culture reference to this, vaguely, vaguely, not directly, not necessarily directly, but well, a little bit, like Ichabod Crane and the story of, what was his name, Wicked Jack. If you remember that. But anyways, there's a story, old and whispered, that the masks used in Carnival were originally worn to protect the soul during spiritual possession ceremonies. James says modern actors and musicians often say they are invoking spirits. And I can personally attest to that. I, not in a long time, but I have dabbled with writing poetry and songs in the past. And sometimes when I would write, I would just literally like close my eyes and just start typing or writing or whatever. I type a lot. I don't handwrite much. I did a lot of typing, but it really did feel like something else would just take control. Not, not in a bad way, not like I couldn't control it, but like I would, let my mind go to peace, go very calm, and the words would just come to me, They would just appear in my head. And and it was a lot easier for me than, other people. So anyways, the when people danced in the street, someone or something else was dancing with them. All right. So the mask didn't hide your identity, but it invited another one in. And maybe, just maybe, that's why the mirrors distort on Halloween. That's is that what maybe that's why we wear masks, because for a moment we get to be something that we're not. We get to pretend to be something other than who we are every other day of the year. We get to be something else. The mask isn't on your face, it's inside it. And there's just something special about that. So, the next segment we're going to get into is the blood beneath the harvest. Thanksgiving, they say, is about gratitude. But gratitude to who? And I'm going to have to be very careful how I word this because I know this can be a bit of a touchy subject, but I'm going to try to handle this very carefully and very respectfully. Um without going on too much of a rant. But, cuz the just mentioning the Native Americans can be a little triggering around Thanksgiving, and I completely understand that. But I'm going to try to be professional. So, some Native American legends speak of spirits bound to the land, spirits that demanded offerings when the harvest came. Perhaps you've heard of Wendigo or Wendigo. I've heard it pronounced both ways. I'm not sure what the proper enunciation is, but it is something that would be like cannibalistic because it would be out in the woods and it would be starving, and person would be out in the woods, they'd be starving, they wouldn't have any choice, and they would resort to cannibalism. And it changed them and made them different. Let's just say different. They could get really fast and they became absolutely amazing hunters. So that was just a side tangent. I get onto those sometimes. So sorry about that. But back to the story. Before the feast, before the turkeys, there were bones in the soil. I once heard a story about a town in the Appalachian Mountains. All right? Every Thanksgiving, they would set one extra place at the dinner table. For the stranger, they said. But no one ever saw him. But if they forgot his place, someone didn't wake up the next morning. The land remembers. It just waits for the rest of us to catch up. Now, on New Year's Eve, the reset protocol. Why do we make noise on New Year's Eve? Bang pots, shoot fireworks, scream at midnight, cause all that ruckus? People are trying to sleep. They got work in the morning. Most will tell you it's to celebrate, but old world beliefs actually say it's to scare off spirits. Here's another theory. What if the simulation resets at midnight? Every year, a clean slate, a software patch. That's when they do the big update? And the noise isn't celebration, it's a ritual distraction, so we don't notice the code being rewritten. And the Mandela effect? Think about it. Now, think of the countdown on New Year's Eve. 10, 9, 8. If you flip 8 onto its side, it becomes the infinity symbol. And eventually, at the end of the countdown, We get to zero, oblivion, the source code, the origins of everything. The moment between seconds where the Ouroboros devours its tail and time eats itself. Now, speaking of time eating itself, there was a very intriguing Marvel superhero known as Legion. And they did have a TV series a few years ago. And I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil anything for anyone that does want to go watch it. But I would like to mention that time travel was a very integral part of that show. But like not time travel in the way you would expect, but like I said, I don't want to say too much. But it was a good show. I liked it. I thought it was very interesting and had some pretty unique aspects. But I know it's based on an old comic as well, so credit goes to Marvel, definitely. But they were also involved in the TV show, so hey, what can you say? I don't know. Anyways, and these are the holidays that we don't talk about anymore. The festivals we've erased, but they're still active, just renamed a little bit. So, okay, I'm reading from my notes, to be honest with you, and I still don't fully understand how to pronounce this word. So I apologize for how badly I'm about to butcher this, but I like to try. Walpurgisnacht. 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 April 30th, the Witches' Night. Lemuria, May's Roman holiday to expel ancestral spirits. And Blut, a Norse sacrificial rites. All gone, all absorbed. And yet, we feel echoes, sudden chills, and forgotten dreams. A compulsion to act strange during certain weeks, or when we see the full moon out. I don't know about you, but when I see a full moon, I definitely get a strong urge to howl at the moon. Howl! 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 But, you can't really go out in the middle of the city and start howling at the moon, or they might lock you up in the nut house or the asylum, sanitarium, whatever we call it these days, the mental hospital. And I ain't trying to go. I ain't trying to go there. James said I think he's saying I pronounced it right. He said, "Yep, Walpurgis knocked. Walpurgis knocked." Man, I'm sorry. That is a very difficult word for me. But, you know, now here's an interesting one I discovered in my research. Zero's Eve. An old folk tale says that if you count the new year wrong, if you say 1 too early or too late, you don't reset. You shift sideways into another simulation layer, another timeline, another reality, another branch of the multiverse, however you want to think about it, where everything's off, but just by a hair. And you feel like you've been here before, because you have. You just didn't count right the last time. And this reminds me of an anime that I watched recently that I really, really enjoyed. And I felt like they did an absolutely amazing job on blending the science with the science fiction and making it very believable how the technology worked, while also being completely absurd. It was strange, but in a good way. It was called Steins Gate. It's a very popular anime in the anime community, and I regret having taken so long to watch it because it really was amazing. And they had John Titor was actually a character. Yeah, a lot like the one from the lore. I don't know if you would call it a conspiracy, but the stories about John Titor, if you've heard about those. But I'm ranting. I just wanted to mention if you're interested in time travel or simulation theory or the multiverse or anything like that, it's definitely worth a watch. But the next time you carve a pumpkin, light a firework, or raise a glass of midnight, ask yourself, is this a celebration or a containment ritual? Maybe the holidays aren't for us. Maybe the holidays are for them, the ones behind the veil, the ones that feed on loops and memory, the ones who are truly in charge of everything, our very reality, and in charge of our very souls. Well, this has been Uncanny Oddities, and if you feel like this episode already happened once before, that's because it actually did. So, until next time, watch the calendars, watch the mirrors, and above all, don't miss the reset. Thank you, and I will see you next time.